Well, a lot of 49ers news for you, and I'm trying to recover from sickness. I'm doing the best possible here in Vicilia, and that means a little bit of a later start, but let some of this stuff trickle in. Tyreek Hill, Bradley Chubb, both released by Miami. Not surprising, but officially now two veteran free agents out there, both actually at positions of need for the 49ers. Now, I know that Hill especially is going to be a polarizing name. I'm not even sure if he's going to be ready to play, at least at the start of next season. Remember, late September this past year, he not only tore his ACL, but a bunch of other ligaments in his knee and also dislocated his kneecap. So we'll have to check in to see on Tyreek Hill's recovery. It's also going to be fascinating to see his market. Is this somebody who's going to have to sign because of the injury, because of his age? He's 32, because of the off-field incidents. Is this somebody who's going to have to sign at closer to the league minimum, or is there going to be a team that's willing to fork over a lot of cash for Tyreek Hill? I don't know at this point. We'll monitor that situation. We do know that if he does make 80% of a recovery speed-wise, he still would move the needle as far as his ability to be a cheetah out there, right? Speed has been the name of the game for Tyreek Hill, and we know that the 49ers could use some speed at the receiver room. But on the surface, it just doesn't seem likely that San Francisco would be able to find a money fit with a guy who has a lot of off-field issues, who's coming off of such a severe injury, although I'm sure fans would be intrigued. More intriguing, I think, on the surface is Bradley Chubb, who the edge rusher who had 8.5 sacks this past season, 48 pressures, coming off of an entire missed 2024 season. He was really good in 2023, 800-plus snaps. Then he tore his ACL. Then Bradley Chubb missed the entire 2024 season. So in his first season back from injury, Bradley Chubb actually put up some decent stats. Like I said, 8.5 sacks, 48 pressures. You could probably, he's entering age 30, so you could probably expect him to still have some gas in the tank, maybe even to elevate his game another level post-injury. I don't know if he's ever going to get to his 2023 self, but the 49ers, a lot of people wanted them to trade for Bradley Chubb before the trade deadline. I'm talking online, not in the 49ers building. I don't think that made any sense because the Dolphins were likely to release him anyway, as you've just seen happen right now. So possibly the 49ers can kick the tires there. I liken this a lot to Joey Bosa, who's also going to be a free agent. Bosa just a year older than Bradley Chubb. Bosa's 31. Chubb is going to be 30 years old. Bosa had obviously a lot of injury issues heading into this past offseason. The 49ers tried for him, but they had a limit of about $10 million. The Buffalo Bills ended up committing about $13 million to Joey Bosa, and he delivered a good year for them. I mean, I thought that Bosa was fine and he was healthy. And if Bradley Chubb could be had for around $10 million this next year, I think that's the same price that the 49ers were willing to extend for Joey Bosa last offseason. And of course, after finishing last in the league in sacks and needing more pressure coming from the edges here in 2026, that might be something that San Francisco does entertain. We could talk about that in a little bit. First, though, the Vicilia dining scene. A lot of you asked, what are you eating in Vicilia? Well, just this awesome breakfast burrito, Component Coffee. I got my dad avocado toast. There he is, happily delving into it. He was like, it's $11. I don't want it. I said in San Francisco, that would have cost $25. The breakfast burrito here cost $14. In San Francisco, would have cost $30. Both pieces of food really good. Downtown Vicilia, Component Coffee. 2 thumbs up. Can't do the show outside today because it's raining here, and it's raining all over California. 49ers have a new DB coach, or they're close to having a new DB coach. Jerry Gray is the man. Now, they check 2 boxes with this. A, they have a coach who overlapped with Raheem Morris, has worked under Raheem. Last 2 years in Atlanta, Jerry Gray was an associate head coach, and he worked with the defensive backs for the Falcons. And B, Jerry Gray was a Pro Bowl caliber player at DB back in the day. And his final season, he overlapped with John Lynch In 1993, Gray finished his career with Tampa Bay. 1993 was John Lynch's rookie season as a safety in the NFL for the Bucs. So I'm sure that when we hear John Lynch talking about Jerry Gray at the NFL Combine in probably a week, either on Monday or Tuesday in Indianapolis of next week, I'm sure that we're going to hear John mention that year under Jerry Gray. And Gray was an accomplished player. John, early on in Tampa, things were not good as a team. They weren't good until several seasons into his career. But John Lynch has often credited some veterans from early in his time, and I wonder if Jerry Gray is going to be one of the veterans whom he credits for instilling in him some of the work habits that were required for him to become a Hall of Fame caliber player later in his NFL career. So Gray has been on the same team as Raheem Morris, new 49ers defensive coordinator, on the same team as John Lynch, 49ers general manager. He's now the DB coach. He replaces Daniel Bullocks, who left to the Green Bay Packers to be their DB coach. It appears that the 49ers did not make a big move to retain Daniel Bullocks, I'm assuming at the expiration of his contract. So they have now moved to an older, more experienced defensive backs coach. Gray's been doing this for over 3 decades and has actually seen some good results over his time in the NFL. He worked with Jair Alexander and the Green Bay Packers from 2020 to 2022. Before then, he was with the Vikings, the Titans. And in 2010, he worked with Cam Chancellor and Earl Thomas and what would become the Legion of Boom with the Seattle Seahawks. One season with Seattle, and it was before Richard Sherman came in. Sherman was in that 2011 draft, but Earl Thomas was a rookie that year. And Jerry Gray, the new 49ers DB coach, was with Seattle in that 2010 season. That was Pete Carroll's first year with the Seattle Seahawks, because his last year was 2009, then Lane Kiffin at USC. Then Lane Kiffin took over in 2010. But the coaching career for Jerry Gray goes back all the way to 1995 when he was the DB coach with SMU. His first NFL job was a quality control coach post with the Tennessee Oilers. That's some trivia for you guys. Do you remember that when the Houston Oilers moved to Tennessee, they didn't initially move to Nashville because their stadium wasn't done? First, they moved to Memphis, and they weren't called the Titans yet. They were called the Oilers still for at least 1 year. I think it was the 1997 season. And then by either 98 or 99, they changed 99. 97 and 98 was when they were still the Oilers. So for 2 seasons, they were the Tennessee Oilers. In 1999, they moved to Nashville, moved into the new stadium, and became the Titans. Well, Jerry Gray was aboard for all of that. Buffalo, Washington. I mean, he's been coaching for a long time. And as a player, he was a 4-time Pro Bowler, prime of his career, 86 to 89. He even won the Pro Bowl MVP back when it was played at Aloha Stadium in Honolulu. Pick 6. Back when the Pro Bowl actually used to be competitive. Franchise tag window opens tomorrow in the NFL, and it closes at some point in March. It's going to be open for a couple weeks. 49ers, probably most obvious candidate to franchise tag is their kicker, Eddie Pinheiro. If you think it's crazy to use the franchise tag on a kicker, well, the 49ers used one on Robbie Gould back in 2019. They didn't end up actually paying him the franchise tag because they agreed to a new contract before it was dried in concrete. But it is a good negotiating tool to keep a guy under contract with your football team for a longer runway to actually accomplish a deal. And Eddie was so good for San Francisco last season. We know how unstable kicker was for the 49ers. Well, he went 27 of 28 with his one miss coming from 64 yards off the crossbar against Indianapolis. Now, the franchise tag has not been set in stone yet, the amount. We need to know the final NFL salary cap before it is, and that's going to come out here at some point between now and the start of the new league year. But it's going to be somewhere between $6 and $7 million guaranteed for one season. The highest paid kicker in the entire National Football League right now is Harrison Butker making $6.4 million per year. So using the franchise tag on Eddie Pinheiro would make him the highest paid kicker in the league. I mean, he was a top 3 guy this past season, so I wouldn't find crazy amount of fault with it. And again, when they did franchise tag Robbie Gould in 2019, before the offseason was over, they were able to find a long-term deal that lowered his cap hit. The disadvantage of the franchise tag is that you have to pay all of that money this season on the cap. You can't spread it out like you would if you negotiated a deal where you could prorate a signing bonus. And to take advantage of salary cap inflation, you would love to push cap hits into the future. That's how the 49ers operate. So you typically would like to avoid the franchise tag, or at least avoid the concrete drawing on the franchise tag. But this window of applying the franchise tag does not necessarily mean that a player would have to play on it. It just ensures that he can't negotiate with anybody else in free agency. And I do think that it's important for the 49ers to return all 3 of their primary specialists. That is Pinheiro at kicker, Thomas Morstead at punter, assuming he doesn't want to retire after this year. There had been some whispers about that. And John Weeks, the long snapper, is going to be 40 years old next season. But those guys really, really helped San Francisco to a good year. That is the triumvirate of news that we've gotten so far this morning. It is unclear if the NFL is going to release a transaction report today, since it technically is a 3-day weekend. But there obviously has been movement on the player front in Miami, with both Tyreek Hill and Bradley Chubb being released. Now, what's interesting about both of those is, since they were released before the ends of their respective contracts, if you sign either of those 2 guys, it will not count against the compensatory formula. The compensatory formula is something that the 49ers have played with great diligence over the Lynch-Shanahan regime. It's a way to add extra draft picks, and the 49ers have found a way to balance this the same way that the Ravens and the Patriots used to do very, very effectively. That's the Belichick-era Patriots, in order to replenish their draft capital. And then they've seen quite a bit of success with their compensatory picks, because it seems to me that for whatever reason, the 49ers are better drafting in the mid to late rounds than they are early on. If a player counts against the compensatory formula, as far as the free agent signing goes, then you have to start really being careful with the APY of his salary to make sure that it doesn't hurt you in what kind of draft pick you might be able to pick up in the following year, because it's a cancellation system, right? Players you lose versus players you sign. The intriguing thing about both Bradley Chubb and Tyreek Hill is that neither of them would count against the compensatory formula, so the 49ers would not have to worry about how any of that would go down. I want to open up the compensatory formula to show you where the 49ers stand at the very moment. Over the Cap does a great job projecting compensatory picks in future seasons. And we could take a look at the 49ers' exact projection on their website right now. And pop this open on the screen as soon as it's available on Over the Cap. Here we go. Could take a little screenshot of it, and we could toss it up over here. And in just a second, it is going to be up there. All right, this is the 49ers compensatory formula for this upcoming draft. They are currently projected to gain 3 picks because of the way that they've played this. 2 fourth-rounders and 1 fifth-rounder. As you can see, it is an elimination system to where you tally the free agents who are eligible for the formula that you lost on the left side, and you tally the free agents that you signed on the right side. So the 49ers lost 3 really high-priced free agents. Aaron Banks left for a contract worth over $19 million per year. Charvarius Ward left for a contract worth $18 million per year. Talanoa Hufanga, $13. The 49ers only signed players worth $4, $5.25, and $4 million in Demarcus Robinson, Luke Farrell, and Mac Jones. So if they hadn't signed any of those guys, they would have also gotten picks for Jalen Moore, Dre Greenlaw, and Josh Dobbs. I think the max, though, is 4 picks in any given cycle. So they would have gotten one more for Jalen Moore. But because Demarcus Robinson's contract canceled out Jalen Moore's, Luke Farrell's canceled out Dre Greenlaw's, and Mac Jones canceled out Josh Dobbs, the 49ers are only in line to get picks for the 3 most valuable departures. Had they made a really valuable signing, it would have canceled one of those picks. They would have had one fewer pick in this upcoming NFL draft. So that's how the compensatory formula works. In the case of somebody like Tyreek Hill or somebody like Bradley Chubb, when you make the 2027 compensatory chart, those guys would not be on it because they are not in the formula. Both of those guys released far before their contracts expired. All the national reporters seemed a little uncertain about whether or not Tyreek Hill will even return to play. Like that, there was just this subtext in all their tweets this morning, at least in 2026, that they weren't. There just wasn't a firm word from Tyreek Hill's camp about his recovery status. It's obviously something that NFL teams will investigate if they're interested in bringing him in. Again, somebody like Bradley Chubb has already returned from his severe knee injury to deliver 8.5 sacks. Seems to me to be a much more likely course of action for a team like the 49ers. I'm going to open this up to questions. I'm going to continue drinking some tea here. I spent all of last night and this morning trying to nurse myself back into as good of health as possible so I could answer as many questions as possible and actually do a show today. I have absolutely been going through it, so your subscription would actually be very, very appreciated. Don't you guys like the old living room here in Visalia? We're sitting in the dining room. Living room is behind us. Set up the camera. We took down the San Francisco studio, and I felt that, okay, this is a good spot to set something up, and it's a good spot to talk about the 49ers and some potential additions moving forward. I've got the roster right now ready for everybody as well. Here you go. You can have a look at that. And as you put your questions in, we will take a quick little peek at our sponsor for today, Nutrafol.
Just hair thinning and hair shedding due to root causes like hormones, stress, and age? Is your hair getting a little dry and maybe a little bit brittle? Well, Nutrafol is a clinically proven daily hair growth physician-formulated supplement for men. In a clinical study, 84% of men showed improvement in their hair after 6 months, and 72% of men showed improvement in overall scalp coverage after 6 months. Nutrafol multi-targets the root causes of thinning from within. So it's going to battle stress, hormones, nutrition, metabolism, aging, and lifestyle factors. It is made with 100% drug-free ingredients like marine collagen peptides and saw palmetto. Nutrafol is the first and only hair growth supplement to be NSF certified for sport. Trusted for hair growth. It is the gold standard for supplements. It's been rigorously tested and third-party certified. The only third-party certification trusted by National Sports. So I know that we're here talking about football. Well, Nutrafol keeps the over 290 athletic banned substances out of your hair growth routine. And that is important because it's key to know exactly what you are putting into your body. Plus, Nutrafol has gone through expert toxicology reviews, label verification, and manufacturing facility audits. This is safe and effective for hair growth. If you buy some Nutrafol now, it's $50 off the first 3 months and $106 off for the first 6 months. Discount applies to all formulas. With Nutrafol, over the first 1 to 3 months, you can expect visibly thicker and healthier looking hair, visibly less hair shedding, and less stress. From 3 to 6 months, you can expect improved scalp coverage and improved hair growth and quality. And past 6 months, It'll be all about maintenance, but you can be proactive now with Nutrafol.
There you go. Thank you to Nutrafol for sponsoring the show. And it turns out that Tyreek Hill has posted on Instagram, and maybe one of our lingering questions answered. He, amongst many other things, said, "But the journey doesn't stop here." So very clearly, Tyreek Hill wants to continue playing. He did undergo what was said to be successful surgery after the injury, which I believe occurred on September 29th. That was during a Dolphins home game early in the season. A lot of damage, though, including that dislocated kneecap, multiple ligaments torn. It's something that you can't just assume that he's going to be back from, especially given the fact that he was one of the great speed players of all time. So I do wonder, there's a right price for essentially everybody, right? If Tyreek Hill has to sign for the league minimum somewhere, given the baggage, given the baggage includes the off-field stuff, but it also includes this injury. If this is a league minimum signing and he wants to be with Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy, because the system with Mike McDaniel did treat him well, those were his best years, 1,700 receiving yards multiple times in Miami, then sure. But if this is a big investment from the 49ers, they need more than just one addition in the wide receiver room. This is a position that I've talked about being one that the 49ers try to hit from multiple angles over the course of this offseason. It is a loaded wide receiver draft class. Somebody like Casey Concepcion, there are people talking about him being their wide receiver 5, 6, 7. He might be available because of that all the way down near the bottom of the first round out of Texas A&M. That's our favorite guy. We've talked about him a lot already on the channel. But the one issue with rookie receivers, especially in a complicated system like the 49ers, is you don't know if they're going to be drinking from a fire hose. They probably will be early in their careers. And I think the 49ers need an instant impact at wide receiver, especially if they lose Jawan Jennings. The Jennings conundrum is interesting because he's valued at over $20 million. I don't think the 49ers value him at over $20 million. This particular place in time for San Francisco requires and calls for more speed at wide receiver, more separation there. The majority of Brock Purdy's interceptions came when he was throwing to Jawan Jennings, and I think the lack of separation might have been an issue there. Great blocker, clutch receiver, majority of the 49ers third down catches as well. You guys know that I'm as big of a Jawan guy as anybody. But Jawan for the 49ers was a perfect fit when they had Brandon Ayuk, when they were separating at the X so Jawan could do his thing in the slot. Jawan as the X creates a different dynamic for the 49ers. They need more speed. They need more separation ability for Jawan to be able to play in the niche where he was best. And that receiver position, this symbiotic relationship is needed by all the receiving targets. And that includes Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle. And the one commonality that the 49ers absolutely need to attack is separation. And it just wasn't enough of it for the 49ers over the course of the past 2 seasons. Let's take a look at our roster right now. I've got the A-list pillars in there. I think it's a good time to revisit the roster building process for the 49ers and the way that they look at all of this. Every single player listed in that yellow color is an A-list pillar. I felt like, think of a house, think of a big mansion, think of a skyscraper, whatever structure you fancy at this point. It has to have its load-bearing walls, its foundational pillars. The way that the 49ers build this roster is around those A-listers who are highlighted in yellow. The one position group that doesn't have anybody highlighted in yellow is wide receiver. Now, there's some ridiculous discussions online about Ricky Pearsall and how his time's up. Ricky Pearsall got shot in the chest. It wasn't his fault as a rookie. And Ricky Pearsall suffered a very unlucky PCL injury that lingered with him throughout most of his second season. But when he was healthy over the first 4 games of that 2025 season, Ricky Pearsall was making a case for this to be considered an A-list pillar. He's not there because he hasn't proven that durability yet. I understand that he's got to overcome the PCL injury, but Ricky Pearsall is the 49ers' top option as we speak right now at wide receiver. It is imperative that the 49ers get him back to health and that Pearsall is able to stay there. That being said, I think San Francisco needs more on top of that. Now, if they trade for somebody like Justin Jefferson, of course, Pearsall's no longer their number one guy, and of course, Justin Jefferson would get a yellow highlight here. But that's extremely unlikely, right? The Vikings probably aren't even interested in trading him this offseason. So I think you have to think of this in terms of the collective unit and not a one-man solution, unless you can get somebody like Justin Jefferson. And if you're thinking of this in terms of the whole unit, well, yes, you need a healthy Ricky Pearsall, and there's a lot more promise there than a lot of people seem to be letting on. But then you start talking about adding some B-list players, either through free agency. So Romeo Doubs, I think, is a good option for the 49ers. You can find him in the teens, right? You don't go up into the $20 million range. And then you look at the NFL draft as well with a loaded wide receiver class. This is why we can talk about Tyreek Hill. Do I think it's likely? No. But if Tyreek Hill is somebody who's forced to play at a very low salary this next year because of so many questions regarding his injury and the off-field incidents, then, I mean, it's not unfathomable to see the 49ers using at least an offseason roster spot for him. They need more in this wide receiver room. Some of it can come from within. Jordan Watkins, Jacob Cowing have the potential to show the 49ers something this next season. But the bottom line is that the number 24 in average separation at the time of catch or incompletion just is not good enough for the 49ers. I want to hear your thoughts on Hill and on Bradley Chubb. I'm going to head into the comment section and read some of what you guys have to say. What are the chances that the 49ers go after both players that the Dolphins cut? They're going to check in on everybody. Again, it's a cost-benefit analysis. Do you go out there and give Tyreek Hill $20 million a year? Absolutely not. Do you kick the tires here and talk to agents at the combine and teams at the combine and try to figure out what the market for him is going to be, and if it's something under $5 million, and most of it in incentives anyway, and Tyreek Hill's really interested in a prove-it deal with you, then yeah, of course, at that point, you might be able to start having some discussions. But the 49ers' willingness to bend the price, again, for somebody with the injury concern and with the off-field issues of Tyreek Hill, is not going to be great. Bradley Chubb is more realistic because he's already proven that he could deliver production after his knee injury. He's a little bit younger than Tyreek Hill. He's still 29 years old right now. Both of those spots are positions of need. I can go back to the 49ers roster right now. Defensive line, yeah, obviously you've got Bosa as a foundational pillar, but Nick is coming off of an ACL of his own. And Nick has already had several ACL tears over the course of his career. You've got Bryce Huff under contract. Mykel Williams, yes, he's also coming off of an ACL tear. I mean, it's a situation for the 49ers at edge rusher that I think is very, very tenuous. I think it's one where San Francisco absolutely must add, either through the NFL draft or through free agency or both. I think Joey Bosa is going to be on their radar again. He was last year. Your willingness to get into a little bit more of a bidding war for somebody like a Joey Bosa or Bradley Chubb might be greater than last season when they are running a salary cap reset. We shall see, but this is what the 53-man projection looks like for me at this point. Wide receiver class this year is supposed to be the best in years. They were talking about the defensive tackle class and the defensive line class last year being the best in years. I get same vibes from the analysis of this 2026 wide receiver class. And the 49ers cashed in. I mean, they picked 3 good defensive linemen last year. For all the people criticizing the 49ers drafting, Micah Williams, good pick. Alfred Collins looks like good pick. CJ West looks like a good pick. I mean, the Collins and West blossomed at the end of last year, and Micah Williams, well, the fact he tore his ACL had nothing to do with your investment in him. He was a stalwart for the 49ers. All three of those guys were great against the run, which is what the 49ers were thinking when they used relatively early draft picks on them. So they cashed in on the very loaded defensive line class. We'll see if they cash in on the very loaded wide receiver class this year. Forbidden Enigma says people saying no to Hill, but nobody in the NFL can cover him. Well, I mean, it was tough to cover him before this knee injury. The big question is, what is he going to be like after the knee injury? And in Kyle's system, he would 100% unlock his route running and speed. Again, how healthy is Tyreek going to be? How effective is he going to be? He's no spring chicken anymore. He's 32 years old now. It's not the best timing for a knee injury as severe as his. But that being said, there are ways that you can scout this out and evaluate it. You can bring him in for a workout. We'll see. The Chiefs might already be on the phone with Tyreek Hill. He may want to reunite with Patrick Mahomes. We don't know. Flying in the dark on this one. We do know that Tyreek Hill does want to return, though, based on his Instagram post. Who would be a better edge rusher based on contract and production, Bradley Chubb or Bryce Huff? Well, I think that Chubb is a more complete player than Bryce Huff. Huff is in the 240s. He doesn't really play the run. He can play the run. He had to out of necessity this past year, but he's a pass rushing specialist. That's what Bryce Huff is. Chubb is a 270-plus pound three-down player. And he was a star before he tore his ACL in 2023. I think that they're going to find a way to renegotiate Bryce Huff's contract this year. Otherwise, he's owed 17 to 18 million. I think that Bradley Chubb is at most a 12 or 13 million dollar player. I base a lot of that on the deal that Nick Bosa or Joey Bosa got from the Bills last offseason. And if Chubb is at that level, then Bryce Huff is probably around a $10 million player, not 17 or 18. It's not guaranteed to Bryce Huff, so the 49ers can renegotiate that before the money vests into a guarantee option bonus, but that's not happening until the start of the regular season. So you say, who's the better edge rusher based on contract? I don't know what the contract is going to be for Bryce Huff. He's under contract, but that probably isn't going to be the final price for the 49ers this year. And I don't know exactly what Bradley Chubb would sign for, but they are also two different types of players since Chubb is more of a three-down guy than Bryce Huff. Ryan says, at this point, I'd rather have Huff than Chubb. You know, you can have multiple defensive linemen on a team, though. So, and I think the 49ers probably need to bolster this position with multiple additions over the course of this offseason, considering how deficient they were in sacks and pressure last year, especially after the Bosa injury. So they could cobble this together through many different avenues. I expect that at both wide receiver and defensive end. This is a good summary. I'm sure the 49ers will explore Tyreek, but there are indeed a lot of headwinds against him. That sounds about right. Can the 49ers afford to sign Tyler Linderbaum in free agency? Yes, if they're willing to make a massive, massive splash at center. You know, they may decide to allocate their resources more evenly across the whole roster, but if they find solidifying center to be of utmost importance, and it's something that Kyle Shanahan determined was necessary back in 2018 when he signed Weston Richburg, and in 2021 when he signed Alex Mack. If they think that's going to be the case, then they can throw a lot of money at Tyler Linderbaum. Sure. Jake Brendel's been better than people have given him credit for. Just this time last year, I said that Brendel did regress in 2024, and I think a lot of it was because of knee tendonitis. He had a better season this past year than in 2024, but he's also 34 years old. And center has always been so important cerebrally in Kyle Shanahan's system that it really wouldn't shock me if the 49ers did decide to spend big like they did on Richburg and on Mack in the past at that center position. One area where the 49ers were also weak was running right up the middle this past year. So the pass protection was actually better than you would expect. But the middle right runs, still remember they weren't able to pick up the inch or two that they needed in that early drive against Seattle, and then they got stuffed on the crazy triple option or whatever they ran. You got to be able to get a yard or get an inch or however much you need when you need that much yardage. And this was the worst season running the football for the 49ers of the Shanahan tenure. So maybe now is the time to press that upgrade button at center and hope that you get a rising tide that does lift all boats. Those two plays did hurt very bad. But, I mean, in retrospect, and I felt this at the time, I probably tweeted it, the 49ers would have had to play an absolutely perfect game just to have a chance against Seattle since they were so shorthanded. And Seattle was historically good. The very second that the Seahawks and Rashid Shaheed took back the opening kickoff, the 49ers' chances were essentially extinguished. So, yeah, maybe they would have been able to claw back and make it semi-competitive had they converted that third or fourth down. But once you spotted them 7 on special teams on the very first play of the game, that it was essentially over. Let's be honest. And it just is what it is. The 49ers ran out of ammo this year. They ran out of ammo. I think that actually impacted the kick coverage. Saw Jordan James look exhausted, taking a terrible angle. And Rashid Shaheed was just off. I mean, it was fresh legs for Seattle coming off the bye. Tired legs for the 49ers coming off a trip to Philly. And Seattle was better stocked for the 49ers. They beat them in week 1 up there when the rest was equal and when they had their guys or most of their guys, and they couldn't beat them in week 18 or the divisional round when they were without a lot of their guys. I think it's as simple as that. Do I think the 49ers should shoot for Kyle Pitts? Well, the big question, and I can't wait to talk to Lynch and Shanahan about this soon, where is the health level of George Kittle and the projected return for George Kittle? At this point, you probably have an idea of George Kittle's timeline if you're the 49ers. And if it's not going to be a return for week 1, and it might be, I don't know, but if it's not, then I think all of a sudden you just have to start talking about adding a veteran tight end. Jake Tonjes is somebody that you'll be able to retain for 2026. I get it, but I think that you could shoot for the stars and land on the moon kind of situation here, because if you do sign another needle-moving tight end, if George Kittle does return early, then you've got 2 needle-moving tight ends. And I think that could take this 49ers offense into the future. They've long had this dream of having 2 needle-moving tight ends, but they haven't been able to attain it. Well, this year, since you're uncertain about George Kittle due to the Achilles, why don't you go out and kick the tires on a Kyle Pitts, David Njoku? He could be a replacement for Kittle for however long he's out, but doesn't mean that you have to bench him as soon as Kittle comes back, right? That could be another way to develop separation and improve the run game for this team, which languished. They were only 3.8 yards per carry. That was the worst of the entire Shanahan-Lynch era. If you feel that receivers are way overpriced, overheated market for veteran wide receivers, and you feel that even though it's a good receiver draft class, those guys may not if you drafted Casey Concepcion, he won't be immediately ready to contribute the way that you need him to contribute to take the offense to the next level. Why not go the receiver draft route, but hold the fort in the short term with a veteran tight end signing? Because that helps both your run game as blocking there and your pass game, because tight ends are that ultimate adaptable position. Why not go out and get an Njoku? Why not go out and get a Kyle Pitts? Draft a Casey Concepcion or insert receiver name here. Hell, if Tyreek Hill is okay with the league minimum or $3 million a year with incentives, add him too, but focus this offense around the tight end position, and then you're not left out to dry if George Kittle's not ready for week 1. That, to me, like that entire plan could save you some money, and then maybe you can make a Tyler Linderbaum splash. Just the way that I'm looking at it. I'm going to have my roster building tool for you guys ready in a couple weeks. It's going to be a lot of fun building that 49ers 53-man roster. But as always, you're going to have to manage the salary cap, and I think that's what the 49ers are going to be trying to do this offseason. Here is a look at that roster. And I do think that the 49ers should think about in terms of how do you get Seattle out of two shell. I think multiple tight ends might be the way to do it. I think that the weakness of this Seattle Seahawks team defensively was trying to contain tight ends. Think about how the 49ers beat them in week 1. It was George Kittle scoring the touchdown early, and then Kittle exited with the hamstring injury. And it was Jake Tonjes. Not only the game-winning touchdown catch, but he had a couple of catches before that, the first catches of his career on the game-winning drive. The Seahawks are a super adaptable defense, especially with Nicky Manwari. The one way I think you got to go strength on strength against Seattle. You've just got to be more adaptable than they are. They stick back in this too deep safety look. They're, for the majority of games, they're still excellent against the run, even though they keep their safeties back. I don't think the league has ever quite seen anything like it. It's the genius of Mike McDonald and the adaptability of the personnel. The one way that Seattle did got this past year was by tight ends. The Rams ran 3 tight end stuff against them, and the Rams beat them once and then racked up a lot of yards against them in the other 2 meetings, even those were losses. The 49ers handed the Seahawks their worst loss of the season in week 1, and they got touchdowns from George Kittle and Jake Tonjes, who are both tight ends. So if you add a second prolific tight end, you kill 2 birds with 1 stone if you're the 49ers. You're able to make up for a potential early season loss of Kittle as he recovers from the torn Achilles. And you could probably challenge Seattle with enough blocking might up front to force that safety down. Bringing that safety down so they're not in 2 shell the whole time is the key to beat the Seattle defense. Because if the safeties stick back and they're still stopping the run, you're going to have to go 15-play drives over and over again. And with that pass rush, with those cornerbacks, those safeties, I mean, that's a really good Seattle defense. The chances are they're going to get you one of those 15 plays. Takeaway, big sack, penalty that you on your own team. You have to walk a perfect tightrope if you have to incrementally go down the field. You need explosive plays. And if the Seahawks are playing 2 safeties back the whole drive, it's almost impossible to get an explosive play. So you got to get that safety to creep up. And I think that the tight end flex with what the Rams were able to do against Seattle and what the 49ers were able to do back in week 1 when they actually beat the Seahawks, I think that's so, so important. Marcellus says, or stretch them vertically to open underneath. Yes, but if they're playing 2 shell, like 2 safeties back, It's very hard to stretch them vertically unless you've got a guy running a 4.2. They used Sky Moore on some of that action last year, and he got open, but the pass protection wouldn't hold up long enough. I mean, that's a slow developing kind of play. I think that this is to beat the great defenses, it always comes down to being able to run the ball. Because if you can run the ball, you do so many things. Of course, you diffuse the pass rush. They can't have their ears pinned back. But you manipulate the safeties, and manipulating the safeties, bringing one down is the way that Kyle Shanahan succeeds in the pass game. Because explosives are necessary, and the 49ers didn't generate nearly enough of them last year. I am holding up remarkably well. Let's like acknowledge this for a second. I am dead sick right now. I can't even believe I'm live right now. I didn't think I was going to be able to join you guys live today, but we're on a streak now. It's like a Cal Ripken streak. It's been a lot of consecutive days with a video. So I had to come through with another video. It is raining outside. I thought, okay, maybe I could do something pre-recorded here in Vicilia. And now it just stopped raining, but it was raining when I started this. And maybe I could showcase downtown Vicilia for you and show you all that stuff. I couldn't because it was raining. So I said, I've got to gather myself and put together a good live at around midday today. And I have not coughed a single time. I don't want to jinx it, so we'll knock on wood. Some wood back here. I've not coughed a single time. I probably seem congested. I am. I haven't been getting good sleep, but I've fought through this, and we've delivered 46 minutes of straight talking right now, which is not easy when one is sick. More questions? Trooper, love it. Eric Gomes chiming in. Hot water with honey, very soothing. Ready to answer some good questions. Come on, guys. We got a couple more minutes at least. This is a good question. Ryan says, once I asked you and you said there was no evidence that Kyle wanted to draft Mac, but did you hear Mac claim that Kyle wanted to bring him here? I heard what Mac said, and Kyle has always said that he liked Mac Jones in the 2021 draft, but nobody has ever gone as far, including Mac Jones, as to say, and I don't even think Mac Jones would have the knowledge capable of delivering here. Nobody has gone as far as to say that Kyle Shanahan was planning to draft him at number 3. There's a difference between liking a player and actually drafting him. And I think actions speak the loudest in this situation. The way that Kyle Shanahan has put it, he was deciding between Mac Jones and Trey Lance. Those are the two guys that he liked. And then he made his decision for Lance. And that was in combination with John Lynch, Adam Peters. And it was mainly Lynch and Kyle Shanahan who had to be in agreement for the 49ers. They still liked Mac. They traded up to number 3, knowing that there are multiple QBs whom they'd be willing to take. Another player in that draft, by the way, available in the top 5 picks was Kyle Pitts, whom the 49ers might be able to sign this offseason. So Kyle told Mac that he liked Mac, that he wanted Mac, but that doesn't mean that he was willing to pick him at number 3. In fact, he didn't pick him at number 3. He picked Trey Lance instead. So, I mean, there's all this speculation about what Kyle actually wanted. We have hard proof of what Kyle actually did. They picked Trey Lance at number 3 in 2021. And two things could be true at once. They can have picked Trey Lance at number 3, and they could have also liked Mac Jones. Like, I don't see how those two things are mutually exclusive. And it all ended up working out for Mac Jones to come to the 49ers several years later. All right, guys. 50 minutes seems like enough for me to talk with a cold and a fever. Support the channel, hit that like button. We'll talk to you very soon.